Welcome back to another episode of Pelvic Confessions. I am Dr. Carrie Howe, joined by my co-host, Dr. Jean Shirakabrad.
If you're just joining us in the new year, Happy New Year, first of all. But on this show, we have conversations that women should have, but don't often have regarding pelvic health and women's health.
Yeah, so I'm a physical therapist who specializes in pelvic health, and so we will present these conversations, confessions, as things women have told me in the clinic that they're struggling with. We always omit any specific details for sake of privacy for my patients.
So to give you a bit of a catch-up, a little rundown. Last year, we started our first season, and this really came about, like Carrie said, from conversations she would have in the clinic, and we talk about it from a clinical perspective, and really the underlying theme that came out of it was more women need to know this.
Yeah, women
right?
just don't know.
Women just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of our tagline came around of women deserve better pelvic care.
Yep.
And better starts with defining better and starts with these conversations. So the point is not just to have like, oh, it's a fun little quirky way to approach it, or this is a confession type of thing, but more of women keep these conversations inside.
Yeah.
It's almost like a confession from anybody else that they keep inside. So the best treatments are often they start with a conversation and an openness.
Yeah, opening up the conversation to make them a little less scary, a little less embarrassing to talk about these issues.
Yeah, and oftentimes knowing or feeling like you're alone in this is not only scary, but it's so hard to find a way forward. So just by putting it out there, I think is a big help.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. At least from the preliminary, what we've heard from season 1. All right. New year.
New year, new mugs.
New mugs.
New mugs.
Same coffee. But we have new confessions.
Yep.
So I think this is important to talk about. The conditions might not change, right? The conditions are very similar.
Sure.
The underlying issues or dysfunctions. But the presentation is very different and the framing is very different. So you might hear or we might talk about similar diagnoses.
Yeah.
But just because it's the same diagnosis does not necessarily mean it's the same problem or same approach to the problem.
Presents in several different ways. So we're hoping that by giving a variety of presentations that women can better relate to it.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Can we help you relate to the issue and then help you solve it? Yeah. So you ready for the first one of the year?
I'm ready. 2023.
I think this is a bit relevant for the time frame of the year. All right, here's the confession. I want to work out, but I'm embarrassed to because of leaking.
Mm-hmm.
I see this all the time at Recharge.
Yep.
Obviously, you deal with it from a women's standpoint and athlete standpoint, but what is this in reference to?
Yeah, so this is in reference to stress incontinence. So we touched briefly on this on a previous video before, but specifically as it's related to exercise, if women are experiencing urine loss during their workouts, jumping rope, running, weightlifting, that would be what is referred to as stress incontinence, the an involuntary loss of urine during impact, during some type of pressure-inducing activity.
So we see our ladies quite often. Most of ours don't avoid the workouts because we created a safe space and kind of work through it, and they have the luxury of having you in their backyard.
Yep.
But they still do one of these of, oh, wait, let me run to the bathroom before I start.
Yep.
Is that a healthy strategy? Is that an effective strategy or no?
It depends what you define as healthy.
Is it a Band-Aid on the issue?
Yes.
Are they just doing something that's not really solving it, just proactively kind of avoiding it?
Sure. Yeah. Typically the train of thought is they want to empty their bladder to get rid of any urine that is inside. So when they're going to prep for their weightlifting section or the jump roping is oftentimes, the line of thought is, well, if my bladder has less urine, I'll leak less.
So that's a great point you brought up because typically it is that dynamic jumping type of movements, but it's not always that.
Right.
It could be a heavy lift.
Yes.
It could be more kind of isometric breath work related as well. Which do you approach them differently?
I would A little, yes, because when you are working towards those higher level skills with our athletes, such as, again, jumping rope tends to be a common one, we do need to approach them differently in the sense of there's an element of specificity to that. And what I mean by that is it's not just training your pelvic floor muscles. There might be a breakdown in terms of jump roping technique that we need to clean up as well. So pelvic floor gets a bad rap, but sometimes it's also that we need to clean up other techniques so that pelvic floor doesn't have to take on all that strain.
All right, I hear you defending your pelvic floor.
I always.
Sticking up for the pelvic floor. When dealing with jumping and leaking, you know how we talked about with waking up at nighttime to pee?
Yes.
The answer was you really shouldn't be.
Yes.
For jumping or working out at all, is there any amount of leaking that is okay?
Again, it depends,
Yep.
right? We're not here to tell women what they should or shouldn't be doing. The word that I want to get out is that if you are leaking during your workouts, there's a solution to that. And so, sometimes it's not uncommon if we're testing higher maxes. So with weightlifting and we're getting close to 1 rep maxes, or we're on that we have a really long workout with a lot of jump roping and we're pushing past our threshold, then sometimes there can be some leaking that occurs there. And is that normal, quote unquote? No, but it is going to be a breakdown of you worked out past your threshold. Same thing happens when you're back squatting more than what your quads can take.
Yeah.
We forget the pelvic floor are muscles and they have a capacity and limitation in terms of performance as well.
So let's take a step back then and talk about that. So we talked about what this is, right? Leaking with exercise or dynamic work, kind of briefly touched on why, because it over exceeds capacity,
Yep.
right? Your pelvic floor muscles get tired or unable to sustain it. But what is actually happening? What can be going on that is causing this leaking? Because I think sometimes that might be the missing piece for women is they don't dig into what is actually going on.
Sure.
It's usually an avoidance of it. I'm
Sure.
not going to work out like this issue, right? I'm embarrassed to work out, so I'm going to avoid it altogether. But what is actually happening or could be happening, the mechanism
So
of the
again,
issue.
stress incontinence is related to urine loss with some type of impact or pressure. And so we talk about the pressure again from our abdominal cavity. And oftentimes what is happening is your pelvic floor muscles, when they activate, when they contract, they should squeeze and lift up on the pelvic floor. And when there's urine loss, typically what's happening is